We will continue today's session with our first workshop, which will be on the topic of convergence of blockchain with artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. So firstly, I would like to invite Mr. John Soldatos from the Intrasoft R&D. He's a consultant for the innovation and delivery specialist to give us a welcome address. Mr. John, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share my slides for this talk. And this is, I guess, the first talk of this workshop on how blockchain technology can converge with artificial intelligence. So in principle, when we talk about blockchain and AI, there are some things that are compatible, but there are also some incompatibilities, especially in the sense that when we build artificial intelligence like supervised learning, we usually have very large volumes of data for training algorithms, which requires, other more robust and more scalable big data infrastructures like data lakes. However, when we really go to the aspect of trust, which is a very important aspect of artificial intelligence nowadays, it turns out that the adoption and the acceptance of artificial intelligence systems won't be so much dependent only on the technical robustness and how advanced the systems are, but also how much they are trustworthy and they are trusted and accepted by their users. That's why we have in Europe a lot of initiatives. In recent years, the high-level expert group on artificial intelligence produced concrete guidelines and recommendations for trusted AI, and a lot of these have made it to the proposal of the European Parliament for trusted AI systems. So, and the ability to have trusted data and trusted algorithms is very important for having trustworthy AI systems. So we all know the Gigo effect. So if you don't have reliable data, then your AI system, your machine learning system cannot be reliable as well. So we need trusted data, we need trusted algorithms, and as I will shortly explain, in AI we need also strong cybersecurity. To this end, I'll take a moment and I'll have some references on this talk on a project which is it's a EU-funded project coordinated by our company, coordinated by Intrasoft. It's called STAR, and its aim is to develop trusted AI systems. And we do this by developing a lot of technologies for making AI trustworthy, reliable, and also explainable and transparent to users. So we've got a lot of a pool of technology starting from explainable artificial intelligence. One technology that we are developing is blockchain technology to ensure the provenance and reliability of industrial data. And here comes also the industrial Internet of Things part. And in industrial Internet of Things applications, or also in their crossroad with AI applications, one of the main problems we have is that industrial data are inherently unreliable. And this is for a large number of reasons. For example, environmental influences like temperature, humidity, or air pressure, or interference, background noise sometimes. For example, if we've got acoustics data from acoustic sensors in a factory. Also, because a lot of IoT data come from sensors and cyber physical systems, they can have a lot of veracity or being faulty, some of the sensors, also some battery problems, and what I'm going to talk shortly, also some devices or even AI algorithms, data analytics algorithms, can be compromised. So there is a strong requirement when we are developing and deploying AI in industrial settings, like a manufacturing plant or an oil refinery, an energy plant, and so on a shop floor. We want to ensure strong data reliability. Also, when we deploy AI, another requirement is that we want strong cybersecurity for the AI system. And I've given here two of the adversarial attacks against AI systems, which are quite common. And this could be a setback for the adoption of AI systems in the years to come. For example, poisoning attacks. So an adversary can try to poison the training data so as to influence the outcomes of a machine learning system like a classifier. And as we usually in industrial environments, as we have more data or new data, we retrain machine learning systems. This is an excellent opportunity for an adversary to attack the system through a poisoning attack, but also other attacks like adversarial attack, providing an adversarial input to an AI system that looks like a real input, but the deep neural network cannot classify it properly. So this is with some sort of adversarial input for classification. So we want to protect our artificial intelligence systems from these attacks again. Now, the idea is blockchain technology and all the good features all the value propositions that the blockchain infrastructure provides, like the tamper-proof properties, the strong security and reliability of the data. Is it a good match? And I've got this in this slide, the known conditions, right, that we need, that we evaluate prior to going for a decentralized approach to data provenance, to data security. So we can really get a benefit in applications where we cannot trust a centralized authority or a trusted third party to provide the security service, and it's better to have it in a decentralized fashion with consensus protocols and smart contracts. And yeah, if you see the applications of blockchain in manufacturing, you will see that there is quite a good match in applications that require strong security, including data provenance, or wherever you want to audit conformity to some SLA or to some data, or what had also some momentum during the pandemic in additive manufacturing networks, manufacturing as a service like 3D printing, where the parties need to share in a trusted way a digital model of a product to benefit from the speed and the flexibility and the efficiency of 3D printing. So yeah, all the use cases of blockchain in manufacturing have this nuance, and one of the good use cases is data provenance and traceability. So this is where we can see one point of convergence between blockchain and artificial intelligence, which is the topic of our workshop. So to ensure the reliability of industrial data, you can leverage a blockchain infrastructure, not only to provide basic data provenance and traceability and to ensure that your industrial data have not been tampered, but also to extend this to parameters of AI algorithms and AI outcomes, in order also to alleviate potential adversarial attacks like the ones I mentioned before, like the poisoning or the evasion adversarial attacks against AI systems. And you will see that it meets the criteria for having a decentralized solution, because if you do the provenance on a centralized database, this system is more vulnerable. So it makes sense to have multiple writers doing this, which can belong also in different trust domains. If you think about industrial data in a value chain, like a supply chain or a circular manufacturing chain. Of course, this idea is not something we thought in our project, right? Something new. If you do some literature research, you will see that the research community has been proposing this as a blockchain application in the last 2 or 3 years. So we've got systems like ProvChain or Product Chain from Tennessee State University, University of West South Wales, Australia, and Smart Provenance from the University of Texas at Dallas. Now, what we are doing extra, and what these systems do not do, is that we don't just care about offering reliability and provenance to our data, but we want to do this, and we are doing this for our AI and machine learning algorithms. Imagine the weights and the parameters of perceptrons in a deep neural network. So all these parameters, we also persist in the blockchain infrastructure, and we want to benefit from the data provenance and the reliability capabilities, so that prior to using an AI algorithms, or at times where you want to audit this, you can check against the blockchain that the parameters of the algorithm have not been tampered. And we actually want to do for the AI outcomes, because sometimes the AI outcomes are input to other industrial operations, or they are elements of reusable elements of implementing manufacturing process chains. So we implement a data provenance infrastructure, and we extend this with data models and smart contracts in order to audit not only the provenance and the potential tampering of the basic industrial data derived from sensors. I wouldn't call them raw data, but also the metadata of the algorithms and the outcomes of the analytics algorithms. Now, our solution is based on Hyperledger Fabric from Linux Foundation. We've seen some benefits in this solution. We're using also some features that the Fabric is offering, like the different channels, which is good for some authentication and authorization purposes. But the main idea goes into the benchmarking, right? That even if this is not, if you are actually storing in the blockchain metadata, so you don't store, the real data. So you are storing, for example, algorithm metadata or some statistical properties of your data before feeding them to the AI algorithm. That's very useful for the poisoning attacks. You still want a decent performance. So in some of our previous projects, we've done some benchmarking of different permission blockchains. In this case, the idea is that you really want a high performance blockchain offering some thousands of transactions per second if you want to use it in industrial settings, rather than a proof of work and the strong security of the stronger security of the public blockchain infrastructure. So that's a little bit of background in our selection of the Fabric blockchain. And then we've got a probes system, a data collection system. We call it runtime monitoring system that collects the data and tries metadata like statistical properties of the data to the blockchain, along with metadata of algorithms and analytics outcomes. Now, what is the application of this? Because we do the provenance to increase the trust. So this means that when we use it to develop cyber defense against, for example, poisoning or evasion attacks. So you can check the statistical properties of the data, you can check the metadata of the algorithms, and you can fuse also information from a class of explainable artificial intelligence algorithms that we are developing, because I think that the outcome of the explanation can provide a feature, an indicator of possible compromisation of the AI system. And by combining this information, we get the metadata from the Fabric blockchain. We can detect potential cybersecurity attack and give a warning, give an output to a risk assessment system to be handled either automatically or by a security officer. So we spot potential abnormalities in the operation of the AI system using the data that have been persisted in the blockchain. I think you can read more in the website of the STAR project. We have really a very rich collection of blogs, and you can read. You can have easy to read pieces of our research. In the coming couple of weeks, we are also publishing this open access book on trusted AI in manufacturing. There are a couple of parts of this book which describe the blockchain solution. However, the book is free. It's open access and it will be free to you will be able to freely download the electronic version. It's already on the publisher sites. It's going to go live as a pre-announcement. It's going to go live in the next couple of weeks. So now publishers, free open access book if you want to read more. So that was, Kostas, I don't know, also later for the panel, a concrete case, a concrete instance where we see AI converging with blockchain. It's not the only one. However, we see there potential for AI and blockchain convergence. And of course, I'm looking forward to listening to more approaches in the next talk and in the panel. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank especially the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum for giving this opportunity, for giving the opportunity for this talk in this workshop. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions, if there are any.
Thank you very much, John, for your presentation. It was really interesting to see how the AI would converge with blockchain technologies. Actually, it is really important because we can see that there are many opportunities that could arise based on the convergence of blockchain, AI, but also Internet of Things, where new business models could be also, we can see, and they can pave the way of new age of digitalization. So thank you for this presentation. I'm sure that also in the panel discussion, there are many questions and many comments that probably could be related with your presentation. I don't know if there is any question from the chat. No, cannot see anything else. So maybe we can move to the second presentation, and I would like to welcome Dr. Søren Jorgensen, who is a fellow at Stanford University and founder of Silicon Valley Strategy Firm. And he is an active member of the community as a mentor and advisor for different tech startups.
Thank you very much, Konstantinos. Thank you for inviting, and thank you, John, for that extremely enlightening presentation just now. I'll also just share my screen, which should work there. I think you can see it. So thank you very much, Konstantinos, and again, thanks for inviting. I am, as you say, a Danish lawyer working at Stanford with a highly international team looking at some of the risks related to the use of technology in the financial sector. We are sort of mid-air in the project we launched in the early spring, and we are working towards the end of the year. So we are kind of mid-air, and I'll be giving sort of a snapshot of where we are of the process, and then I'll be joined by two of our researchers who will share some, Rodolfo and Felix, who will share some concrete input on the work that we are doing. So for the past years, we've been working on a project on responsible finance. We've been working with European and international banks and insurance companies on how to integrate data ethics or ethical principles into business practices. And as we all know, those are many. Technology holds enormous possibility, and that's certainly true for blockchain, which will in itself solve a lot of also ethical challenges or ethical problems. But they do raise a quite high number of challenges, and John mentioned quite a few of those. In the area of blockchain, we can also point to bias in human agents, issues relating to conflicts of interest, asymmetrical power relations, the big challenge of related to energy consumption, compliance issues, and heaps of questions relating to regulation and regulators. And we obviously need to find solutions to these. And we've seen a proliferation of guidelines in the past years. This is also true for the blockchain area. This is a study, an overview done by Harvard or at Harvard on the emergence of ethical guidelines. As part of our project, we interviewed a German CEO last year who looked at me during the interview and said, "Oh no, please, no more guidelines." And we certainly need guidelines. It's extremely important to ensure responsible digital leadership and responsible use of technology. But I get his point. He actually agreed that we do need guidelines, but it's also a balance. Just as we need regulation and we need sort of the active involvement of regulators, we also need to understand that it's also culture. Or that the issue relating to responsible leadership also very much relates to culture, and that's very much what our project is about. We've put together a very international group. We reached out to about 10 universities all over the globe. In Brazil, Nigeria, South Africa, India, Singapore, China, North America, and various places in Europe. And we've brought together a team of just about 50, mostly PhD or master level students from these universities. I think when you total that, it's about 27 countries that those researchers come from. And we are then working together with a group of international financial sector institutions, 3 from the insurance sector and the rest from the financial sector. And we are supported by organizations such as the Copenhagen FinTech. The project is anchored at Stanford in a collaboration with California Polytechnical, and then we are working with these universities and institutions that are mentioned here. And the advantage we have from this is that it's a very diverse group. We have geographical inclusivity, which I think is increasingly important in this very international agenda, and which is actually one of the weaknesses in many of the areas relating to this. And we also have a very high level of sort of faculty diversity. The Italian PhD students who are participating are all psychology students. The Nigerian PhD students are from the Lagos Business School, and we have engineers, lawyers, philosophers, and others who are part of the work here. So we have a very high level of diversity. And what we have done is that we formulated a joint or shared challenge to the teams that we're working in. 5 teams, one looking at insurance, one looking at payment, one looking at credit and lending, one looking at customer management. And given that the climate is one of the biggest challenges that we all face, we've also made a team looking at climate. And they all have the same challenge, namely looking at the ethical issues relating to the use of technology and describing those. We've issued all with the same research tool, a template we've made with a room to explore and describe ethical dilemma or ethical challenges, as most of them really are, and exploring them and looking into what solutions might be to these challenges. And so we have a sort of a wide process of work in these tracks, supported by work in sort of the larger group, by reviewing literature and interviewing experts, and doing design thinking, brainstorming activities relating to that, which then sort of gives us a process of design thinking approach, supported by a mixed method academic approach in that. And we have two main outcomes from our work. One is a research part, which is sort of a description of the findings that we have in white paper, papers, articles, and so forth, podcasts, and then a technical solution, which will be a conversation platform that I'll just give or just add a few more words on. So we are, as said, working in 5 tracks, collecting these dilemmas, and as I also said, we are sort of a little bit mid-air. We've spent the summer working on the dilemmas described in these template, and we are currently reviewing them between teams and across teams, and just about to reach out to have a wider discussion and a wider feedback and review on the work. We're using various tools to provide insight and work with the data here, and sort of managing the findings that we have. We've identified just about 50 ethical issues or ethical topics that we are looking at. We'll probably end up with a little bit less than that, but relating to a very broad area of topics related to the use of technology in the financial sector. So anything relating to from sort of customer profiling, data ownership, innovation versus consumer vulnerability, innovation, transparency, algorithmic transparency, inclusivity, and so forth. So a very wide area of issues that we are really looking at. And we've identified risks relating to that, algorithmic bias, data bias. Many of these are sort of well known. Some I think are sort of a little bit less described, and come from the fact that we have a very sort of broad participation from the Southern Hemisphere, or the global South, meaning that or leading to the sort of discovery also of issues relating to geographical or social inclusion, and what the use of technology might mean in very specific contexts. So we've in relation to blockchain, we've sort of identified issues such as the well-known energy consumption or the issues relating to very high energy consumption. We have identified risks related to social exclusion and marginalized groups. And we're looking at topics such as money laundering, cryptojacking, scam coins, those are well known, and the right to be forgotten, and relations to regulation, which Rodolfo and Felix will describe a little bit more in just a minute. And the intention of our work is to use our findings as the core for a learning platform for corporate learning. To go back to the discussion I had with the German CEO about a year ago, we need to promote on the sort of necessary level of understanding within industry, and we need to promote a responsible culture within organizations, and by using the findings set up in a game or a gaming environment, we hope to be able to contribute to that. And then going back to the work and the findings that we have, some of the researchers that we've worked with here, Rodolfo and Felix will be present, Yemisi, Eskil, Michel, Marek, and Maxwell, have also looked at issues relating to blockchain, those that I mentioned, energy consumption, money laundering, cryptojacking, so forth. And I'd like to introduce you to Rodolfo Farias, speaking from Curitiba in Brazil, who will take a dive into one of the ethical issues that we've looked at. Are you here, Rodolfo?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you listen to me?
Yeah.
Okay. So hello, everyone, and good morning from Brazil. I would like to start by thanking you, Soren, for inviting me, and congrats you and Elise's effort to bring together all those amazing students from all over the world for our project. It's been an amazing journey to know how other countries are dealing with these problems. I am a lawyer here in Brazil, and I am working with some fintech initiatives, but I am also a master's degree student at Universidade Federal do Paraná, studying the impact of regulation on new technologies, mainly in the financial market. About our dilemma, the main focus here is to understand how the regulators are addressing the problems related with blockchain, AI, IoT, and what are the outcomes from this interference once they are shaping the modern way the incumbents and the fintechs are addressing the market. Different jurisdictions have opted for different regulatory designs, and when we analyze from a global interconnected perspective of blockchain initiatives, we can see how these regulators in the world have considered specific aspects in their markets to better understand this phenomenon, deciding between more or less freedom to experimenting new solutions involving AI or blockchain, or more consumer protection, or even more protection for securities markets. From our study perspective, it's important that we clearly address how different jurisdictions are behaving worldwide in allowing or restricting innovations involving the use of AI for access of credit, payment systems, and of course, financial inclusion related with blockchain market and crypto economics as well. Cases such as the banning of one exchange in UK highlight this topic that we are studying in this dilemma. We are trying to understand how the regulations can move forward to better address the new perspectives we live in a blockchain world full of innovative initiatives, and at the same time can protect the crypto economic consumer markets for products and services without creating unnecessary barriers to innovation. Particularly, I tend to believe that innovatives such as regulatory sandboxes have sent an important message of market opening to explore new frontiers. Problems involving security, privacy, efficiency, and integrity of financial systems are also existing from the traditional financial market, and we may need to revisit these topics to better address them in a blockchain context. I believe that collectively, what is important is we keep in mind the question how we can possibly and positively shape the development of this technology. Thank you for your time, and now I invite my colleague Felix to talk about the next dilemma.
Thank you very much, Rodolfo. Also, I want to thank Sören and the whole community for giving the chance to present a blockchain-related dilemma, as well as a little bit of a future outlook of the research of our community. Myself, I'm a political science and technology management student at CDTM Munich and currently at Sciences Po Paris. And the topic that I want, or the dilemma that I want to talk about, is the right to be forgotten and the controversy between the right to be forgotten and blockchain. We already experienced that the right to be forgotten is quite hard to maintain in our digital age. Theoretically, users should have the chance to let the data that was collected about them delete after the data is not used for its original use case anymore, or if the data is fraudulent. Past lawsuits and law cases, for example, with Google, already showed that it is really hard to maintain this right to be forgotten in the digital age, since also the sheer amount of requests for deletion might be subject to human error. With the emergence of blockchain right now, and also the use cases of blockchain, for example, storing data, IoT data on the blockchain, or self-driving car data on the blockchain, the immutability of blockchain and the right to be forgotten might be a problem. We, as an ethical issue I've identified, is how can we basically assure users and or data givers basically that their data could be deleted after it was, if it has fulfilled its original use case, or it has proven to be fraudulent. And a big problem and question that we have to ask ourselves, and also policymakers have to ask themselves, is whether the right to be forgotten can still be applied in the digital age. So our challenge for the future is that we need to decide whether we want to face the technological perspective and improve the technology of Bitcoin, of blockchain, and make it possible to basically afterwards modify the data that is stored on a blockchain, or whether we modify and adjust our currently policy situation in order to make the right to be forgotten still applicable. Further, this was now the dilemma, and still we have formulated a dilemma and we are still working on them, but in the near future, and currently already some teams were formed, is the plan to work on specific papers and research papers that will be published at the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022. And here specifically the intersection between blockchain, climate and policy is of specific interest for us. On the one side, we want to look at the corporate finance reporting directive or sustainable finance reporting directive of the European Union, and want to evaluate whether it basically requires companies sufficiently enough to report the implications of technology usage, such as blockchain, on their sustainability reports. This is the one regulatory perspective that we want to write one paper about. And on the other side, we have some great expertise in our team about, or that studies deeply the climate impact of blockchain and the environmental impact of blockchain. And here we can look at the proof of work and proof of stake difference, and really want to deeply analyze the implications if at one time, for example, cryptocurrencies will be used on a wider scale. And I hope that in the near future you will see our publications and remember this meeting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Felix, and thank you, Rodolfo, and thank you all for listening to our presentation. We are, as said, sort of a little bit mid-air, and in the process of reviewing the findings that we have and developing onto that, as also explained by Rodolfo and Felix. And that means that we are extremely interested in dialogue, and so our ask ask, or a general ask, is that any comment, any reaction be directed to us, and please engage in a discussion in order to elaborate and expand on the work that we have. We will take this forward and look forward to that discussion. So thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us today.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. There are many issues that you raised, like ethical dilemmas, that we plan to discuss also in the panel discussion, and I'm happy that we can also be there in order to be involved in this discussion about ethical dilemmas that are really important. Actually, it is true that the blockchain as a new technology, we need to understand not only sometimes it's quite hard to understand the technological background, and that means that legal parties, I don't know if you agree, Soren, legal parties should incorporate people with technical backgrounds in order to understand and try to support all of these issues that are arised for regulation and through the companies that are trying to use this technology. I don't know, what do you believe about that?
I certainly agree. You're quite right. I think that's spot on in the development of our abilities to manage these highly complex issues, which all relate to sort of various aspects, and exactly that kind of diversity is crucial and important. So we need to learn how to sort of bridge sort of languages and cultures between faculties academically, and bridge relations between academics and industry and with regulators and politicians. So we need to learn how to translate these issues, and we need to work in very diverse teams. So diversity is, if not the key, then one of the most important aspects of our solutions going forward. I think the other one is inclusivity, and that's what we've tried to attain here by reaching out very globally and make sure that we have sort of all regions of the world part of the discussion here, because cultural aspects vary and are also an important element of our understanding of the challenges. We need to find answers to those, of course, because I mean, we're talking blockchain today, has extremely high potential and for in so many areas. So all the more reason to focus on how we manage that.
Do you believe that as part of global initiatives, do you feel that blockchain is treated equally in every region? Is there any region that is more competitive, according to your experience, if we can say that?
Well, from the speakers that we've had as part of our project here, I will certainly say that things are happening very rapidly in Asia, and that has been our main finding. I think looking across, I think Rodolfo would add Brazil and South America, where we know a lot is happening. But looking across the regions, and from what we've seen with the people participating here, I would point to Asia.
Okay, thank you. And Rodolfo, very nice presentation about the ethical issues. And do you believe that this decentralized finance is a hot topic in the blockchain sector, for sure? And I would like to ask you if the transparency in that sector that is offering through blockchain and this convergence with all the technology will safeguard the users. If you believe that this convergence of AI, blockchain, and IoT will safeguard the users,
okay,
based on the GDPR and the right to be forgotten.
Maybe from a regulatory perspective, I think this is the question, the most important question, because if this cannot happen, probably the regulators and the users will not engage in using such platform. I mean, probably if they don't feel safe using that with transparency, security, and including the soundness for the financial stability, this kind of technology will not have a broad case of use.
Okay, thank you. And Felix, do you believe maybe that the blockchain can offer new ways and new challenges for the companies that are related with the financial sector?
I mean, I've been talking about the problem that, of course, also financial data is stored on the blockchain. It might be subject of fraud or fraudulent data, and it might be necessary to be able to adjust the data after it was stored on a blockchain. And here we have two paths essentially. On the one side, blockchain could be a curse because if it's technological not possible to adjust or to feed in the data after it was already stored on a blockchain, we probably couldn't incorporate the right to be forgotten in the blockchain space or essentially in the digital space. If it is possible to do that, and there are certain technological startups and efforts to adjust the blockchain afterwards, it could be essentially a pretty great instrument in order to achieve the right to be forgotten, because you would have one central basically gatekeeper, which would enable data to be modified or deleted in the aftermath. Because currently we have the problem that data is stored everywhere, and there's so many companies that have this data, and we don't know where they are stored, so we don't really have access. And that's right now also the lawsuits that are going on right now. So how can we enable companies without AI tools to modify data in the aftermath? So I think blockchain could be a chance, but also a curse. It kind of depends on the technological development right there. But as a political science student, I cannot go very deep into the technological details.
Thank you very much, John. About this interesting presentation, how does the IoT sector see the blockchain? You presented some examples, some use cases. Do you believe that in the IoT, the blockchain technology can support the IoT implementation, and maybe together with AI, we can have new ways of digitalization, maybe?
Well, I think we have already some interesting applications, right, and proof of concept, and many startups, right, that they combine IoT with blockchain. So just to name a few, there are many good applications for multi-domain traceability, so supply chains in different industries, right? Like pharma industry, agri-food. So I think that we already have a very good pool of proof of concepts and a very rich set of pilots about how to combine IoT with blockchain. I think what I'm lacking, and I don't want this to sound, a little bit conservative to our audience or judgmental for blockchain, is that we lack a large-scale application, right? So in the digital finance sector, we have the crypto, and the crypto, we like it or not, crypto assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, you have a large-scale application. So you have one application which is used by hundreds of millions of people every day and billions of transactions. And you've got an infrastructure that it works, it's very robust, and so on. So we have this with the cryptocurrencies. I think we need something like this in the other blockchain applications. Not proof of concept, not pilots, because we've got a lot of these and a lot of these ideas and positive validations and so on. But I think what we are lacking is something that really scales very much. So it's used virtually by anyone, right? Like the Bitcoin or the Ethereum and the other cryptos. So certainly there is a lot of potential. I think the applications, aside from this presented, certainly all the supply chains could benefit from blockchain technology. However, it seems that there are also other ways to do this provenance, this collaboration, and so on. And still, we don't see, a very large-scale blockchain application like we have with cryptos. The day we are going to start seeing these applications, I think that we will see the full potential of blockchain in sectors other than digital finance.
Yes, you highlighted also the adoption of blockchain in security. Do you believe that the blockchain can somehow modify or change some of the security components in the IoT sector? Could be changed with blockchain or could be supported with blockchain, some security components in the IoT sector? Do you believe that this could happen?
Yeah, I see it, but again, this is a personal opinion. So, I will see it, for example, in multi-domain IoT applications, right, where we cannot rely on centralized security. Let me give you an example. If in 10 years we're going to have 2 different fleets of autonomous cars on the street, and these have to coordinate themselves to drive safely and to do even more than one fleet can do, I think this is a use case where you need decentralized coordination, right? Because this is not something to be controlled, I don't know, by Tesla or Uber or BMW and so on. You want all the different fleets to coordinate themselves. So this is, in my mind, a very good blockchain application, again, from the business or the functional sense, right? Because then you have to look at the scalability, you have to look at the speed, the latency, and many other things. So certainly, I wouldn't say, replace component costs. What I would say, certainly we will move into an era where when you design a system, when you design a solution, you are going to have 2 options, the centralized option and then decentralized option. And then you will have to choose. I'm not saying that this is going to be 50-50, right? But maybe, 90% of the systems remain centralized and 10% are decentralized. But we have to think that this 10% or this 5% is a huge success for blockchain. It's a tremendous success, right? To build 5 or 2% of the systems as decentralized systems.
Thank you, John. Thank you for this discussion. So, as the blockchain is a technology that has exceeded the initial conception of cryptocurrencies and financial, I think that the convergence of blockchain with AI, with IoT, and the direction of these technologies can offer enhance the capabilities and benefits that we can have. So this combination can create new opportunities, commercial opportunities, and some examples that can somehow indicated are in the healthcare sector, in the retail sector, where we can try to collect, for example, data from different IoT sensors. This data can be analyzed with AI technologies, and of course, the blockchain can support the secure transaction processing or other different capabilities that are important. So, continue this discussion. I would like also to continue the panel discussion and involve and try to welcome Mr. Bruno Lepri, that actually leads the Mobile and Social Computing Lab at Bruno Kessler Foundation. Bruno has recently launched an alliance between MIT and Bruno Kessler Foundation, and he's active in the AI sector as a consultant also. Bruno, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
Sorry, I was on mute. So, thanks for the invitation. So yes, so as it was said, so I'm leading a research group active on AI and in particular artificial intelligence for modeling human behaviors and what is called computational social science in Trento in Bruno Kessler Foundation. I also work in a company role as advisor for Manpower Group, that is a company on hiring and staffing for a solution of AI, introducing a solution of AI in the market of human resources and hiring. And so all the aspect of the ethical dilemmas and issue are connected with this. And then I will share also some of my vision on in the following panel of the usage that can be done of blockchain and decentralized machine learning to permit a more fair AI and less centralized and more ethical AI perspective. So then I think I will let the introduction to all the other panelists. So it's done.
Thank you, Bruno. I would like to introduce also Dr. Tatiana Evas. Actually, we're very happy that she's here, and she's a legal and policy officer at the European Commission, DG Connect. Her recent efforts are focused on the regulatory framework for artificial intelligence and AI, with a particular focus on the mobility sector.
Hello, Kostas. Hello, everyone in the panel. Thank you for very inspiring presentations by John and Søren team. It was very interesting to hear that. So, because it's also from regulatory perspective, how much ethics and regulation was mentioned, but also to see the real use cases and to see, kind of implications of what you're doing at the regulatory level. From my side, I have been following topic of artificial intelligence, but from regulatory perspective from 2015. So first worked for European Parliament when just first discussions have emerged. What is AI? Do we need to regulate AI? How to understand it? Is it different from other technologies? And then yes, now I'm working for European Commission at the unit which is responsible with drafted this Artificial Intelligence Act. Thank you.
Very, very nice. We will have a very nice presentation about that. And also, I would like to welcome Mr. Rolf Freeman-Schneider, member of DG Connect and leading the sector of Internet of Things.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks, Kostas. I work in the unit Internet of Things. At the moment, I'm deeply involved in the launch of Horizon Europe work program. I think first calls are open in the area of cluster 4 from destination 3, from cloud to edge to IoT for European data. So part of the data strategy, where the discussion on centralized or decentralized system is very on top of our agenda. Also, I will talk about this a bit later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, we have a very nice presentation about AI and Internet of Things. Thank you for being here with us. And Mr. Fabrizio Del Maffeo, CEO and co-founder of Accelera AI, that develops technology for AI acceleration. And actually, Fabrizio was previously the head of artificial intelligence and managing director of a Bitfury company.
Yeah, correct. Thank you for inviting me, Konstantinos. Yeah, my background, I had worked for decades in Internet of Things. Over the last 3-4 years, I started to look at the integration of Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, then with a focus at the edge. And I led the AI in Bitfury, which is a very large deep tech company with a strong focus in blockchain technology, as many of you may know. And now I led this spin-off, which merged Bitfury AI with IMEC, and we plan to deliver a specific technology. Then I'm very familiar with the limitation of the edge, problem of the edge, constraint of the hardware, and this integration of AI at the edge and blockchain. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Before starting this panel, I think that we have with us Mrs. Ellen Kopman from the European Commission representative. I don't know if we can have a welcome speech, if there is not any technical issue with the connection.
I hope not. I think you can hear me loud and clear. No, I just want to thank you for organizing this session. I think it's very interesting and topical for us at this panel. I mean, together with colleague in European Commission and the stakeholders here at the panel to discuss the intersection between IoT, artificial intelligence, and blockchain, and how these technologies can interlink and work together. I think there are a lot of scope for that. We have already seen the industry working in that direction, and just very interesting to really listen to your interventions here, and hopefully we can learn something more together. Thanks a lot for organizing. We are working together in partnership with the European Union Blockchain Observatory Forum, and we're really happy that we can organize this workshop in this event. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you that you are here with us. So let's continue this interesting discussion. Actually, we already discussed that there are some ethical issues, some ethics questions that should be analyzed as this convergence of these technologies, IoT, AI, and blockchain. You can understand they're posing different risks and challenges that should be somehow considered and mitigate. So from technological perspective, as we have billions of IoT devices and we need to protect, we have also legal and regular complexities that should be taken into consideration for using this data and having AI algorithms that they can analyze this data. There are different challenges for the governance, privacy, data ethics, compliance that are really, really important. So the ethics are a fundamental step in developing this kind of solutions and having this convergence. And maybe we can start with a presentation of Dr. Tatiana Evas in order to analyze and try to discuss, especially for the AI Act, the development and what is happening in order to support the ethical issues that are arising, and then of course try to see how these ethics are really, really important for the convergence of these different key technologies. So Tatiana, I don't know if you want to share and try to present the guidelines for a trustworthy AI.
So yes, once again, welcome and thank you for having this opportunity. Actually, the discussion which we had just these two opening sessions was very constructive to what I was thinking to present. And maybe I just start with the thing that we use a lot of ethics, you know, as a kind of overarching concept. But I think ethics is very important, but it's not everything. And I really was smiling when Søren presented and said one of the interviews from the German stakeholder who said, you know, we have enough of guidelines, enough is enough, you know, on this complex map of how many now guidelines, and also guidelines from the international organizations, but also industry and so on ethics of AI. So that's actually was our starting point, that ethics is important. We need to discuss it, but we need to move beyond just discussions of soft law and guidelines, which everybody understands different, there are different interpretations. And of course, we built a lot on the work which this, for example, high-level expert group at the European Commission level or OECD level has elaborated. But we decided to move one step further and really develop a legal framework. In here, the European Union is really a first mover. So now European Commission made a proposal, legal proposal for horizontal regulation. And I will just try to take 3 minutes to explain what it's all about. So first of all, it's very important to understand that this proposal builds already on the existing legislation. So general data protection regulation and all sectoral legislation continues to apply. So for example, on machines or medical devices, etc., or the legislation in the financial sector. But this is horizontal regulation looking specifically at AI components. So for example, the overall safety of the machine will be subject to machine regulation, but specifically what relates to AI component will be dealt specifically by this horizontal act. And the idea is to really provide kind of competitive advantage for Europe to become a global hub for trustworthy artificial intelligence. And why do we really, we actually spend quite a lot of time in discussions, including with stakeholders, to understand whether we really need a horizontal act and really legal legislation for AI, because of course it's a technology and one type of technology, and we don't produce legal acts for every type of technology. Yeah, but after kind of detailed analysis with different stakeholders, we came up to conclusions that specific characteristics of AI and the widespread of these different technologies, which we call AI, really kind of call for the specific regulation related to AI technologies. What we also try to do in this regulation is to be innovative, not only to promote innovation in AI technologies, but also innovation and regulation. And those who like more lawyers of political science would see that the build-up of this regulation is a bit different from what we usually come up with. So we try to build future-proof and kind of flexible elements in this regulation, which is almost counterintuitive for the legislation, or at least how we see legislation. But we try to build also this kind of regulatory innovation to make this to work also for the technologies as artificial intelligence, which are rapidly developing. What we want to create is really level playing field, so everybody who are planning to put into service or bring into EU market AI technologies will be subject to same rules. So it's not like that, I apply this ethical code and you apply this ethical code and we see how to interpret it, but we have all same standards. What's also important to note that this basic Artificial Intelligence Act proposal will mostly focus on high-risk AI applications. So it doesn't regulate any single AI system which is produce minimal risk, for example, which is actually will be majority of AI systems, but the focus of this regulation specifically on prohibited AI systems, which we believe contradict EU values, for example, social scoring. And then we focus on high-risk AI systems. And for high-risk AI systems, we propose to set of requirements, so ex-ante requirements. So before the product can be put into the market, so this AI system which fall into the high risk, it would have to comply with certain requirements. And requirements would be familiar to many, so it's based actually on this ethical framework, so transparency, human oversight, requirements related to data, cybersecurity, robustness, accuracy. And here, just maybe to conclude, just that now we start to work with European and international standardization bodies to really make these requirements operational. So we want to move from the kind of rhetoric to action and really try now to work in next 2 years. That's kind of our tentative plan to make sure that these requirements of human oversight, transparency, or cybersecurity or accuracy are really something which market players can apply. So the system which is proposed by Artificial Intelligence Act will require the conformity assessment procedure. So before these high-risk systems could be put into market in the EU, would have to go through conformity assessment procedure. And in order for this conformity assessment procedure to be effective, then of course the conformity assessment and standards are really essential. So that's what we are now working on. And here maybe just to highlight that in addition to this regulation, which is kind of the key focus, is to boost trust. In the same day as we proposed regulation, also the coordinated plan on artificial intelligence was adopted. This is actually a very interesting document. It's a programming document or strategic document between European Commission and 27 EU member states, which looks at the strategic sectors and kind of enabling conditions which we need to develop in order to boost excellence and European competitiveness in AI. So this is kind of a map, let's say, what this coordinated plan covers. And here, just in relation to blockchain, wanted to briefly mention that we, particularly in the section on funding and scaling, specifically discuss or bring as an example the pilot of artificial intelligence and blockchain, which was super successful and attracted a lot of investment, and looked at this pilot interaction between AI and blockchain. And specifically, this pilot scheme reached total investment volume of 1.2 billion. euro in market via private co-investment. So, and this will be something continued. And just maybe on policy convergence, we speak about technological convergence, but just to mention kind of in policy thinking convergence, European Union sees both the blockchain and the AI, of course, as one of the priority areas, and we want to be at the forefront. Therefore, we have EU blockchain strategy, and we invest heavily, let's say, both in AI and also blockchain. And yeah, that's maybe just the last slide, and I finished. This is about the kind of the sum of the numbers where EU is planning to invest in next years. It's just to show that these we know that we are falling behind still of investments with US and China, but with this new wave through Horizon Europe and through the Digital Europe program, as well as Recovery and Resilience Facility, and just some examples, it's not exhaustive list of all funding instruments. The Europe really aims to boost these investments in this sector. And this is only for AI. Like I said, there is also additional investments in blockchain technologies. So we hope that this will help Europe and European researchers to bring up these technologies to the new level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It was, it's very, very important what you're presenting and all the different steps, the fundamental steps that are really, really important for AI, but also it's good that there are initiatives and pilots with AI and blockchain. Do you feel that the guidelines covered clearly and sufficiently the ethical considerations of AI, and most probably I suppose that some of these guidelines could also be applied to the convergence applications? I mean, when we have a combination of technologies, AI, IoT, blockchain, do you believe that these guidelines could be also applied to this convergence?
Yeah, I think ethical guidelines and ethical discussions are very important, but of course we cannot substitute the legal, requirements and discussions. But just maybe to highlight that, so this regulation, the proposal, if it enters into force, when it enters into force, will apply to high risk AI systems. However, for other non-high risk AI systems, we very much promote voluntary solutions, so voluntary code of conduct, ethical guidelines, etc. So here, of course, all the research and inputs done at the international level or by the industry is still very important. We just believe that high-risk AI systems require, additional layer of protection. But definitely, there is a big scope also for ethical discussions and considerations, be it in autonomous vehicles or in the financial sector or medical sector. So this still remains very important. And there, I think blockchain indeed can play a role in terms of security of data, for example, or the sustainability questions if we address it properly. So this is something indeed for priority for the European Union.
All right, thank you. And we have seen that actually the legal approaches in US for blockchain and different applications are examined case by case, but in Europe we are following, let's say, we have a broader sector of regulation. Do you believe that, especially for some cases like autonomous vehicles that you presented before, do you need that we need also to focus in some of these domains and try to follow a case by case research or case by case examination?
We actually discussed this topic quite intensively, and we decided against sectoral approach, exactly as you said in US. Actually, we decided for combination. So this Artificial Intelligence Act will be horizontal, let's say, regulations. So it will apply, so the requirements which I mentioned on data, on accuracy, and cybersecurity will apply in all sectors. Doesn't matter if it's financial sector or medical. But of course, through sectoral legislation, for example, on autonomous vehicles, it could go beyond, or in addition, or it could be maybe the specifications, technical specifications can go into more detail. But our aim was to have a horizontal level playing field that all high-risk AI systems, irrespective of the sector, must comply with this set of requirements. So that was an idea, because we thought that if we start to regulate, medical sector will start to regulate and understand what AI is in one way, and what is trustworthy, or what is transparency, or what is human oversight. And then, for example, financial sector will have completely different or divergent approach, when we will not have for citizens, kind of a level playing, when we said, okay, all AI systems, irrespective of the sector, which are high risk and in use in European Union, at least meet all this, set of requirements.
Thank you, Tatiana. You're right. And Bruno, what are the main ethical issues that we should consider?
Depend a little bit from type of system of AI that we have in mind, as was said by Tatiana. So we have both high risk and less risky type of AI system. From the point of view of building this type of system, and in particular for the type of work that with my research team and my research center we do. So we work mainly on building a AI system and computational models that try to interact with human beings, and also that try to take mixed decision with the human beings. So there are aspects related to all these profiling or personalization type of method that require some type of regulation and some type of standard. So that means that, for example, that the type of system that you introduce in the market need to avoid discrimination, avoid biases, avoid disparate impact on different type of population. So these are some of the things, and also so I think pushed by the policymaker discussion, pushed by the regulation that also in Europe are stronger than in other country and other part of the world. I think there is a movement also in the research domain to build a solution that take in consideration this aspect in a more firm way. So they try to build, for example, fair machine learning solution or try to consider really explainable type of machine learning approach. In particular in some domain that go from the human resources to the financial sector, to the medical sector, and so on. So I think the double movement from one side activists and also some internal researcher, and on the other side from the policymaker and from some government and the European Commission is pushing these things. On my point, so I think that this should be taken as a sea of possibility, in particular for the research. So I think a researcher should not be scared at all. Maybe company can be more, but not for sure researcher, because I think AI has a lot of things still where we need to work and we need to improve. And having this sort of requirement and constraint that becomes also legal constraint, I think are a good push to develop good technology. So this is my feeling. My feeling is also that sometimes the things came out from research lab to market with a little bit of overselling, no? So I see that. So while I'm not a big fan of criticizing, for example, domain of research like affective computing itself, I think that going from the research domain in affective computing to the market needs some step in the middle. So I think that some startup or a big company that move this type of product directly to the market should consider that this technology is not still, so has still some problem in accuracy, in biases and so on. And so there is still a lot of work to do for some of these things. And I think that the legal type of approach can help to speed up also the research.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bruno. Fabrizio, actually, based on the convergence of IoT, blockchain, AI, new ethical issues may surface based on the current state of the technologies. You already, as far as I know, you were involved in a face recognition solution. So that means that based on the convergence of these technologies, key technologies, maybe we have new ethical issues. Have you identified any ethical issue based on this convergence that is going to happen or happened in different areas?
Thanks, Konstantinos, for asking it. Well, the problem is AI is moving to the edge because it's not possible to send all the data to the cloud. So it's not possible to elaborate the data in the cloud. You have to then have artificial intelligence close to where the data is collected. And more data are in the form of images and video. And the problem is, the ethical problem is that then you see yourself in front of a camera quite often. And what's happened to that image? What is going to happen to you moving in front of a camera that can be in an office, can be outside the street, can be in a vending machine, for example, that you may use to pay for other services. Yeah, and then we observe that this problem has to be solved in two ways. First of all, the eye at the edge should then filter the data, and the data then you transfer to the cloud should be extremely limited. And this data should be validated. Then we go back to the comment that even John said about where we put the blockchain. Definitely, we cannot use blockchain on the data that are going to be produced by 120 billion devices or trillion of sensors. Then you have to protect the metadata, you have to protect the personal information, you have to filter and validate it in the beginning. On the other aspect, the problem is that in the typical example that I made of face recognition, which is becoming more and more popular, actually you are also, the camera is pointing at something that is more than you in front of her, is pointing at the environment. And then there is severe concern of what the camera is recording, or the images, or the video. And AI can help, again, to filter that, to be sure that whatever the camera is pointing at should not be transferred. And the information should stay locally, transfer only what is required, what is approved by the user himself, through a protocol of trust. Again, we have to create we have to not only have a secure connection, but create a protocol of trust that ensure that all the data is safe and is reliable data of things. But of course, it's still, we are not still there. And then the concern is which kind of data should be used, and can we be sure that the data is safe? Can be sure ethically that the algorithm is working correctly and no one is touched, because the algorithm is running on the edge machine, then it's not centralized. And then you have to be sure that no one can touch and change the algorithm that is used to extract this information. And there are several aspects that I think the European Commission did an extremely good job in identify all the risk, the ethical risk, and also identify framework that sooner or later will be used to allow AI to be used in the edge application, and to allow a traced and safe AI.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Actually, recently the European Commission published a very interesting survey about artificial intelligence, blockchain, and the future of Europe. And it's really nice that we can see that IoT can be considered as the sensing part, the AI is the thinking part, and the blockchain is the remembering, can be considered as the remembering part. So IoT is a key element for data generation, collection. There are many initiatives from the European Commission, many projects in the IoT and also with AI to support different applications. So I would like to ask Rolf if he would like to make a short presentation about AI, IoT, and see how important is the convergence between AI, IoT, and blockchain.
Yeah, thank you, Kostas. Particular thanks to my colleagues who had a perfect introduction for my presentation. Also, I will go a bit backwards, maybe on a more abstract level. You should be able to see my presentation.
Yes, yes.
All right. So as mentioned, you know, we have under Horizon Europe Cluster 4. We're launching research innovation projects on what we call from cloud to edge to IoT for European data. The data strategy, I think we talked a lot about data already today, use of blockchain and the use of data, but the Commission put on top of its agenda a data strategy. And you know that many of the cloud providers are not coming from Europe. So we need both. We need a strategy for cloud, but we also consider that we are in a transition from cloud to edge to IoT for European data. And that's why we have sort of a streamlined strategy now, also supported under the Research Innovation Framework Horizon Europe. Again, I think we discussed it today already frequently in different areas. So I want to be more concrete that if you look at that scenario, people at home, elderly people at home linked to independent living and health issues, we experience that individuals have more and more sensors. It's not only the smartphone, it's also the power of integration of sensors and new technologies, and the way, you know, to have new ways of gadget and wearables and all sorts of home domotic sensors. So it's no issue in the future that more than 100 sensors could be easily integrated into one unit, which means that you have in your environment more intelligent devices, more devices sensing what's going on, not only, you know, visual recognition, but also, you know, looking at the context in any of the movements or any of the utilities or consumption, what's happening. The trouble of IoT today is that majority of IoT data is directly transferred to the cloud. And on top of that, even worse, it's transferred to the cloud of the manufacturer of the device. So if you're combining different devices, different sensors, your data will be in a cloud somewhere, and it will be in a silo. So there are two issues related to that one. First of all, you reduce the potential use of the data, the exploitation of the data. And secondly, you're increasing the attack surface from IoT devices in terms of security, and botnets as one example. But this is not what the user is needing. He needs sort of what he wants to have. He wants to have intelligence around him, understanding what's happening, understanding the context, understanding the situation, and do some reasoning in this environment before taking action. And he also doesn't want that all this data is somehow stored in a central repository or there's a central surveillance system. But of course, if needed and there's a critical situation, he wants the data to be shared. Either he needs a medical support or he needs to share the data with other medical records. So here there's an interaction sometimes needed with external, with doctors or with hospitals or with external cloud systems. And we largely discussed already ethical issues around that. Yes, of course, there are a lot of issues related to privacy. From the IoT point of view, there's obstacles, you know, how to identify devices and validate the devices in your environment, that they are able to connect and allowed to connect. We talked about data provenance, but also it's about the identification of the devices. On the security side, certainly that will reduce the attack surface if you keep the data local, and we have that You've heard that already. So what we are focusing on the Horizon Europe is to foster this paradigm shift from cloud to edge to IoT devices, to have a new way of orchestration. And we heard that already, particularly in the area of AI. It would make sense to have more intelligence at the edge and more decisions decentralized. I would not agree with John, that we only have 5% of decentralized systems in the future. Predictions say that 8% of future data is happening, is computed at the edge, decentralized. So there's much more movement going on. But apart from that, yes, having AI at the edge, what does it mean for managing the devices and updating the AI algorithms? Because still you have the learning eventually in the cloud. So what I wanted to tell you very briefly is that we had a strategy forum recently, and there's also a report where we focus on the system integration platforms, how you deal with legacy systems. The call is open in that domain until October this year. But I want to draw your attention to the wide area of discussion, what we talk about, visionary concepts, exactly talking about how to deal with decentralized intelligence, distributed computing, swarm intelligence, virtualization, but also integrating AI at the edge. And that is a field of exploration. We don't know where we're going. We don't know, how to secure this decentralized topology and how to manage devices on that level. But certainly it's clear, we will not have a central repository managing all that. And decentralized management techniques like DOT or blockchain will have a large potential. We're planning a workshop in November, in the week of 8th of November. Look at our board portal, and then you will see the date. But what we're discussing right now, I think I don't have to mention much of that, is that to make this transition from cloud to edge to IoT happening, we will benefit from reasoning at the edge. I think you mentioned AI integration, how does it work, new ways of chips, but how to deploy the algorithms in a dynamic way to the edge. Real-time response. I think we want systems, who feel something, who are reactive to an event, and not just, sending all the recordings to the cloud, wait for the decision of the cloud and feedback the decision. We see a big role of distributed security, distributed DOT, managing security at the edge level on a decentralized basis, and doesn't make sense to have here also central security certificates. That will be an overhead which is not accepted by application developers, and it will avoid scaling. And at the core of many of the discussions at the moment, how could we put in place in the future schemes of this cloud edge IoT orchestration? Because the cloud will stay, of course, and there will be both will be existent, a new edge system, a new IoT system, and a new cloud system. And how do we deal with the orchestration? How to update software? How to do patches? How to deploy AI algorithm? How to benefit from learning in the cloud? And that basically concludes my short intervention. And I think I'm really happy, in discussing further details with you. But I think you have touched already on many of the issues there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rolf. As IoT is a key element for data generation and collection, and there are many IoT devices that we have today. So I understand from technological perspective that this convergence will bring the difficulty of protecting billions of entries of IoT points. So as you already presented through the Activates project on the healthcare, so maybe there are many entries that they have to be protected. I don't know if you consider this convergence and blockchain that could be used for protecting these devices, IoT devices.
I think I mentioned it a bit already, that there is a huge way, a huge question, how to deal with. You mentioned hundreds of devices in the decentralized way, but it's not only the hundreds; it's also the heterogeneity, the multi-vendor domain of the landscape. So okay, yes, you would need something like a gateway, dealing with device management or ID management. Yes, but then, again, you have the same question with the scaling. How do you scale then? If you have one gateway for the whole plant, or one gateway for federated plants or houses or district. So I think the only solution is that you have federated gateways. And federated gateways would need, they need sort of a common base where they have the ID check, where they validate a new device is appearing, or they validate an update of a software of a device or patches. And there, distributed ledger technologies, keeping gateways in sync is a key element of that one. And then we had we had few proposals in pilots and that experiencing, how to set it up. There were pilots in homes, energy-related homes in Norway and others. So I think this idea is not pretty new, but it did not really, at the moment, was validated in a large extent.
Okay, thank you very much. And regarding the next generation Internet of Things and this decentralized intelligence that we can have machine-to-machine interaction or human-to-machine interactions, do you see the adoption maybe of smart contracts and some automation in different processes that could be supported through smart contracts with blockchain technologies and also federated learning with AI?
The different elements, yes, certainly there's a need for automation. I think I've put here the example of living at home and health, but there are other examples like energy where you need automation in a decentralized way. I think, if you generate solar, or if you plug your electric vehicles into the grid, there's an event and you have to happen and you have to react immediately. So there's need for automation. And then, of course, that particular the way the domain of energy goes along with a pricing model. You need contracts or smart contracts between different owners of the device. I think the owner of the car or the manufacturer of the car somehow has to talk to the grid operator or to the building automation, the energy manager of a building, and to exchange information. But this exchange of information is linked to electricity. Electricity needs somehow contractual arrangements that goes down to microgrids, micro contracts, micro arrangements. You may call it flexible tariffing, but it's not essentially down to euros. It could be sort of a virtual currency or a token or whatever you call it. But you need some way of documenting what happened, where did electrons flow, and what is the contract behind it.
Thank you. Fabrizio, about AI, we need to train AI, federated learning, and how we can use the federated learning capabilities in the different data that are being collected through IoT. How do you see? I mean, there are also many initiatives and working groups also on federated identities, digital identities. Do you see that this kind of technologies could support this federated learning and the federated models training that is needed?
Yeah, definitely. Federated learning is something that is emerging and it's interesting and probably one of the way to go. Of course, in Europe, we still have the problem of access to data, which is a huge problem that the European Commission already is facing it. Yeah, I think that's it's one step further to make AI at the edge a reality. In addition to this, of course, there is also an infrastructure that has to change completely because it's too centralized. We're talking about AI at the edge, but we still rely on ultra-centralized data center, not equally distributed. 5G may change this, moving more to proximity of the end node and the sensor. This capability of collecting data, of learning, of inferencing, but still it's a large investor infrastructure that must be done earlier, as soon as possible, because we are lagging behind other regions. And we have to tackle this and not only connect things, but also try to bring all the infrastructure necessary to enable intelligence at the edge and necessary to enable this federated learning. But I think that Bruno Lepri can also share more on the direction of federated learning.
Yeah, so thank you. So so to me, the vision that I think where federated learning can become very important is really in the way how you can having AI that is distributed and in particular permit to work on data that doesn't move from the premise of company, or in the case that there are personal data from the personal device of individuals. So one of the idea that is around since a while was pushed by a colleague in MIT, and it became also something connected with the GDPR, is this idea of having personal data store, in particular when you have this notion of personal data. So you control as a user, as citizen, you have the control of their own personal data. But this is also applied to company when you have, for example, insurance company that need to work with banks, and for them, in that case, the data has also a unique business opportunity, and this make a very difficult collaborate between company and also make available this type of data for public good. So one of the solution that we envision is really that you never move the data. So you never move the raw data. What you move are the algorithm, or better, what you do is that you have a federated learning that on the node of this company or on the node of the individual devices learn things, and then they share parameter and insight without sharing raw information. For example, this is something that we are working also with John within a European project that is called Infinitec, is a flagship project. And one of the things that we are doing together with IBM is really building a system, a framework to activate a personal data market, and in particular a data market between or entity or citizen and entity. And the idea is that, so this happens when you have that the learning is completely distributed and federated. And one of the things that we do is that we use blockchain to record the transition and the exchange of insight, never of raw data. So we have a cooperative type of learning approach between different entities. They need to share this insight to solve together a task. And these exchanges are recorded in the blockchain. And together with the usage of token, we really give a sort of economic value of this type of exchange. To solve a given task, you can get some economic value. So to provide some of the insight that you have as an entity to help another entity to solve a task, a common task, or a task that they want to solve, you get back some economic incentives. But the important thing is that we never move the raw data, and we never record the raw data on the blockchain. What we record are only the insight and the parameter of the learning algorithm.
Yeah, this was became, I think, yes, access to data seems always to be a problem, particularly for European companies. But if you look, if you ask Amazon, how to get access to raw data from the Echo, there's no problem. And you may ask Tesla, what about the data on their clients? There's also no problem. And Tesla also has no problem to deploy any of the AI algorithms to its vehicles. So where's the problem then in Europe?
Sorry?
I was saying then Tesla also has, as an example, has no problems to access the data of its vehicles or the drivers.
Yeah. So sure, one of the ideas is that, so you want this framework to permit the citizen and the individual citizen to have much control of the data. And you have you try to have this framework, because in some case, this is more for traditional type of company. This exchange of data is not so simple like we can think. I give you an example. For the COVID pandemic, it was not so easy to make accessible data of telco company, also aggregated data, to researcher. It wasn't. So, and also with all the effort the European Commission did, and the European Commission did some interesting things and some good effort, but it was not something that came out so easily. Again, so if you have a situation like two banks that want to, for example, work together on fraud detection, the unique data of bank Y are unique and they don't want to share to bank X. And in some cases, so only to have a profiling of an individual or to solve tasks that require a broader view of this type of data. So this became complicated. For sure, there are companies that have no problem to access all the data of individuals, but really this framework where you move with the algorithm and you keep the data safe is also a way a little bit to control that also the individual data don't go everywhere without any type of control by individual or by authorities, because also authority can control this, no? So it's, I would prefer to have some type of control on my own data, that having everyone accessing without any possibility of putting some flag on my side.
Tatiana, can you see new opportunities or challenges related to governance and privacy, data ethics, about what we're discussing this through this data sharing and data protection issues?
Yeah, I mean, data is definitely a strength, and many participants said is a key, you know, and IoT, of course, it's a great data generator, so to say, but of course we need to see how to make it secure, and that's what Rolf has explained to us. So we need to, I think we need to, and also maybe presentation by Søren and the team today, of course, brought up to the discussion whether GDPR needs some kind of adjustments, you know, in light of the technological developments. But of course, at the EU level, we quite strongly hold to GDPR. So this is something to be discussed, you know, how but I mean, definitely Europe will remain strong in data protection rules, and we think that's the right way. And I think with all the difficulties and maybe imperfections, GDPR still played a very important role in having more, giving protection to personal data. So I think in short, probably my answer is that we need also to work on the governance and the regulation, but also on the technological solutions, which will still hopefully somehow give, as Bruno said, some control to personal data.
Thank you, Tatiana.
I think it's also important to, I think it's also important to consider that the Europe economy is based on SME. SME played a very large role in European economy, and the problem of SME is that they don't have data because they are SME, they are not Google. Then one problem that must be taken as soon as possible is really to have a framework of exchanging data between small and medium enterprises, which is the key to develop AI eventually. Without data, you don't develop AI. There are activities in place, but we should really accelerate this. It's extremely important in all the sector of this, because the business-to-business market is worldwide dominated by European company, while the consumer probably is more Asian and American. But still, in the business-to-business, exchanging data is not simple for protocol reason, for GDPR reason, for different legislation in different countries. I mean, we need to tackle as soon as we can this problem if we really want to have AI and if we want to develop intelligent system and deploy.
this is I think it's very important. So because I think that the situation we have right now is that we have a sort of two extreme. No? On one side we have, as I was saying before by Rolf, so we have some company that have access to everything. Then on the other side you have, in particular in European market, so you have a lot of company struggling with few data. So this is the reality. So the majority of the traditional company, small, medium enterprise that we have in Europe don't have enough data to do a proper AI. And they can work only as an ecosystem to really have a sort of AI and automation of the process without becoming an ecosystem with other company and having a framework that permit to overcome risk, legislation differences, but in particular also really overcome the sort of constraints that you have in terms of business control of their own small amount of data. So if you can permit this type of framework that permit to this SME to collaborate and cooperate together, you may have an AI also for them. Otherwise, the AI will be only for few very big company, and they will only usage services from this type of company. They will never develop really their own AI. So it will not happen. So at least this is my opinion.
Rolf, what do you think about the idea of some decentralized marketplaces where your producers can share their data, models, and the resources? There are also some projects that they are trying to implementing some decentralized marketplaces where the users can share data, or they can share models, AI models, or different resources. Do you think it's a good idea for building these marketplaces?
I think we had that, as you mentioned, a couple of projects, and it was very close to majority on the data marketplaces. But I think, as Fabrizio said, many of the SMEs have already problems to understand how these data markets function. Do they trust them? And secondly, if they go over the first barrier, to understand and will be willing, then there needs to be a lot of work in order to put the data in the right format that you can share the data. It's not just, putting data on a marketplace and throw it away. You have to distinguish what is valuable data. You have to put it in a certain format, and you have to clean your data. I think that is a prerequisite for any of the AI algorithms. And that, unfortunately, many of the SMEs do not have the experience or don't have the capacity to do that little, in quotes, little exercise. I think that's what we try under the Digital Europe program, to put in place the lot of AI test centers in order to allow SMEs, particularly, to experiment with AI algorithms, and to play around with their data and start cleaning their data. I think so. The success of the marketplaces, in particular of the smaller data marketplaces, is again, not the access to the data, but the willingness of the participants in order to clean the data and make an effort, and then to share the data. It's a bit of a cultural issue which we've seen, and it takes a lot of time, to really ramp up such marketplace. So it's not forgiven.
Bruno, do you believe that the blockchain would support this open decentralized markets?
It can be a way to do it. So as I was saying before, this is one of the things that we are, for example, exploring in the FinTech project, where we really are trying to use the blockchain both to, on one side, activate the market, so with the token really activate the exchange of value in charge of the data or the insight. And on the other side, also keeping track of this type of thing. So one of the important things is if I want to share some type of information, keeping track to which will be the entity that will use the information, and putting some control. So I want the information it's only share with some specific node of my network, not with everyone. And so this is one of the possibility that can be done using the blockchain, for example.
Thank you. As we have 1 minute left, so maybe we need to summarize with some concluding remarks. I can see that based on this discussion, very distant discussions, I would like to thank all of you that you attended. Actually, I think that convergence between all these key technologies should be a long-term process. I don't believe that can be done very quickly, as we have different key technologies that they have to have the convergence, and in order to be applied in different also industries, as we discussed. If you want, maybe each of you, maybe we can summarize with 10-15 seconds. And also I would like to thank you for your participation. It was very, very interesting. Let's start with ladies, Tatiana, with some words, summarization.
I want to thank you, everyone. It was an interesting discussion, and I definitely learned. And I think this dialogue, as have been mentioned, between different levels, technology, policy, and academia is extremely important. And with further AI processes, it becomes even more important that we speak the same language.
Thank you. Rolf?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for the discussion. We see a future for applying AI at the edge, for decentralized coordination of devices at the edge, and benefiting from new generation of IoT devices.
Thank you, Fabrizio.
Thank you, Konstantinos, and to all the other members for this interesting panel. Yes, of course, I believe in decentralization of the AI, and I think it's going to happen, and Europe can play a leading role on this. I'm pretty sure about it.
Bruno?
Yeah, thank you also on my side. So I think that the decentralization, it's really something needed for Europe for the things that Fabrizio was saying. So the type of economy that we have with the small and medium enterprise. And on the other side is also the way that I think as democratic society, we should try to push to avoid too much centralization of this instrument in very few hands. That could be more risky than a lot of other risks that usually we discuss.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank all of you that you attended, and also the presenters today, and also the European Blockchain Observatory that gave us the chance for organizing this workshop. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.